Welcome to the Funnel Reboot podcast, brought to you by Marketing What's New. Let's get into today's show.
Hey, Glenn here. Welcome to Funnel Reboot. Today, we look at the difference between a traditional funnel and a persuasion experience. First, let me remind you that the deadline for the old Google Analytics is approaching, and we want to be ready for it in June 2023. And to do that, we need to transition to Google Analytics 4 now. Information on how to push forward fast on GA4 comes later in the show, and you can find out more in the show notes. The funnel is dead. Long live the persuasion experience. That's the view of my guest today. She is someone who did something rare for people in their 20s. She turned a side hustle into an agency that she co-founded. The firm, Persuasion Experience, works on marketing brands that require funnels for lead generation, things like SaaS and consumer branding. She shares experiences learned working for every kind of brand, from emergency plumbers and B2B, as well as home builders, and even cosmetic surgeons specializing in Brazilian butt lifts. Let's go learn about this kind of architecture from Alisha Conlin-Hurd. So glad to welcome Alisha Conlin-Hurd. Welcome, Alisha.
Hey, Glenn. So good to be here. Thanks for having me.
I'm so glad to have you. And today we're going to talk about what happens after someone clicks on a website. We have, as marketers, an urge to try and make something happen. And I think we all pat ourselves on the back after we design a website or we work on a campaign that draws people to a website, and we check and see, and sure enough, a form works, and we kind of, slap our hands together and say, okay, well, that's done. What's for lunch? You, on the other hand, make the contention that we're probably only beginning at that point, that if we just leave it like that we're probably treating our prospects as if they're in a very traditional funnel, and we do that at our own peril. Is that right?
Exactly. That's where the fun begins, is when after you get the click. And so if you think of your ads or your email, everything in your marketing, it has a focus or a point to it. And that's just to get to the click. So you've got somebody to come here, and then you've got them to fill in the form, say. But then what happens next? Well, your funnel is only just starting. You don't even have the sale yet. So to start with, one of the biggest mistakes I see people make is that they finish their funnel at the acquisition phase. So they get the lead and they're like, yep, let's go to lunch. My work here is done. But you have all of these other aspects to your funnel, which we can get into, like the activation, like, how do you make that lead actually become a sale? What are the sales enablement pieces that you have out? And then once that person's actually coming into your company, how do you create an awesome onboarding process? How do you remove the post-purchase dissonance? How do you create a strategic word of mouth and referral funnel? How do you find more revenue? What's the next logical step for that person? And so what you really want to be thinking about is, how can you make the most of every click? This is friction point one. How can you make the most of every click after the ad? And then how can you make the most of every lead and sale? So unfortunately, end your lunch break, come back, and you need to figure out these things as well.
That's okay, because it sounds like there's a lot of good stuff that happens. Let's deal with a marketer's contention, though, that they don't have any information on what to change. Let's say that they're looking at, well, we're going through, this is being taped in early to mid 2022, when Google Analytics 4 has been announced as what's going to be the only tool that we can, use for free to monitor our web traffic. I know a lot of marketers who would say, if you set me in front of that thing and told me I have to figure out what the visitor is telling me to make my marketing better, forget it. But is this a false dichotomy? Are we pushing people into just looking at one data source when there's others out there? You've got experience with pulling all sorts of data from different places to try and figure out what's really going on. What do you like to turn to?
Yeah. And that's a good question, because most people get analysis paralysis. And basically, marketing's just inputs and outputs, garbage in, garbage out. They're trying to look at all of these different data sources, but they don't actually know what to do with it. And they think they need to split test things, and they think they need to get all fancy. And naturally, our human brain wants to overcomplicate and find the most complex answer to everything. And I work with billion-dollar brands like Linktree and Wayfly, all the way to smaller brands. And everyone has the same problem. And it's that they haven't got their 3 core pillars of their marketing done: target market, message, offer. That's it. Before you try and split test anything, before you get trying to look at all this data, which is important, you have to go back and you have to make sure your foundations are right. Because if you build a house on sand and you don't have a nice foundation, it's just going to keep sinking no matter what little band-aids or little patches you try to do. So when I'm working with people, I want to pull them back and go, target market, message, offer. Who's your target market? And they're like, oh, some, like they do this or this. And I'm like, no, if you don't know what this person like lays awake in cold sweats about, and like their pain points, their hopes, their dreams, their fears, and what they actually care about. And then you can figure out your messaging and your positioning and your offer. And what I really would implore people listening to do is, first of all, think, what are we really selling? What are we really selling? We don't sell widgets or services. We sell entry into a desired after state. And once you can figure that out and you can figure out what is actually the transformation and the problem that you solve for people, then this other stuff isn't going to matter, because you're going to have your foundations down pat, and it will completely change your life. Your life will be easier. Trust me.
I believe you. There's, I suppose, you keeping it simple, right? Target market, message, offer. And I know that one of the things that you're a strong believer in is that what we're trying to do here is lead them. We're aware of where they are today for that desired future state. But it sounds to me like you're also just trying to make them take the very next step. There are multiple stages, right? So if we can get them to figure out this offer is right for me on this particular page, that's a good thing. That has served its purpose. If other people left, if you gave them something that is a no-brainer of an offer for someone who's at their stage with their pain, but it's maybe a small conversion like watch a video or maybe sign up for an email, that's a good thing to do. Is that the kind of thing that you're talking about with what a persuasion experience contains?
Yeah. And so to sort of unpack what it sounds like you're talking about, or how I can elaborate on that, is people are having a conversation in their brain, and not everybody's ready to talk to you, and not everybody's ready to sign up to this offer and get on the phone with a salesperson. That is not sexy. And most people don't want to just jump on the phone. They're in fact-finding mode. So there's something called the 5 Stages of Awareness by Eugene Schwartz, and you can Google that, and it very obviously shows you. And you need to be clear on the conversation that you are entering. And so in your funnel, you have to create different content, different lead magnets, and different messages to match that temperature of traffic and to match the message going on in their brain. So if you think of it this way, most people like to cherry pick sales, yeah? And the best analogy I can find is that you're in a retail store and you're at the cash register, and you don't move from the cash register. You just stand there, and the people that come to you ready to buy the jeans, then you sell them. But there's all of these people touching tops, trying on hats, looking at the jeans. And if you just took a step in like a couple of meters in your retail store and just answered a question or helped them to figure out what to buy, you would have way more people lining up at your cash register to purchase. But a lot of companies, they want their quick wins. It's very first order thinking, and they don't want to invest in creating that ecosystem of solving problems. They only want to get people on the phones. They don't actually want to like have that conversation earlier on. But by not doing that, that means that you don't get to become a trusted advisor and someone gets to know, like, and trust you earlier on. They're having those discussions in their brain and those conversations anyway. That buyer's journey is happening with or without you. So either you can get in there and you can help to nurture them and create a bigger, wider pool of customers and leads and sales for you, or you'll always be capped and you'll be unable to scale because all you're doing is cherry picking the 3% who are actively looking at that end of the buyer's journey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well put. To contrast it with what a retail experience would be, I think in the digital experience, we have to remember that they have these questions, and
Yes.
we sometimes have to feed the question following it with the answer. So we need to, for example, if we can offer them to give their email address, then we could drip on them with some of these things. And
exactly.
People will have a latent need, but it sometimes takes us. I think this is what your word activating is sort of getting at, is we have to say to them, we've had other people with that need, and they ask this question, and here is how what we do solves that problem.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, you need to understand the target market, because usually when they're further down, they're not educated. So often the way that they describe their problem is a symptom of what it really is. I work with quite a few complex, we'll have to edit that out. I work with quite a few complex SaaS, B2B companies, and nobody's searching for what they do. They're not like, I need this exact thing and I'm looking for this.
Yeah.
What they're actually doing is, I have an issue with my invoicing, but it's like that's just like a tiny little part of the symptom. And so you need to figure out what are those problems that people are looking to solve, and then help to nurture them and help to educate them to what they really need to know. Because in marketing, there's what somebody wants to hear and what somebody needs to hear. And people have this curse of knowledge where they're like, blah, like trying to tell you all this information. And it's like, whoa, that's not the conversation in my brain. Like, what are you talking about? And so what I work with a lot of people is they know all this awesome stuff and they're so smart. And I get this with funnels. I'll start talking about stuff and people will start drooling and staring at me blankly because I have this curse of knowledge where it's like, no, you have to remember this person has no idea. Like, you're in it every single day, but they have no idea. And you have to really understand how to articulate the target market's problem better than they can themselves.
You have to do that impossible thing of trying to remember what it was like before you knew all the stuff that you know.
Exactly. Yeah, quite impossible.
So, yeah, that takes some special skill from a communication standpoint. So what would you say also are the types of people skills that someone who is trying to go from an old school funnel to a persuasion experience, what is like the mindset, or what other things might they need to be able to pick up?
So the first thing is maybe like just defining what might be a traditional funnel versus what we call a persuasion experience. And so a traditional funnel, in my humble opinion, from doing 450 of them, is that it's very internet marketery. And it's like, the people are going to go through the exact steps that I want them to do, and they're going to read this email, then they're going to do this. And the thing about humans is they're batshit insane. And so they don't always do exactly what you want them to do. And they're illogical. And there's this thing that Google calls the messy middle. And so it's all of this, the stuff that they're going to do before they make the purchase decision. And so what we actually think about as a funnel is that it's just the steps that somebody takes when interacting with your brand. So it's not just the stuff that you craft beautifully and the perfect marketing collateral that you make. It's all of your digital footprint and everything else that you have about you, where they could find and interact with you. So
True.
The other thing is that a lot of people think, because of this traditional funnel, that a funnel is optional. They think, okay, well, I'm not going to make that funnel. That's fine. I'll just have a website, because you can have a funnel in its own universe, external from your website, where you just send through targeted traffic. But a funnel is not optional. If you have a business, you have a funnel. And a funnel is just the steps that somebody takes when interacting with your brand. So if someone lands on your homepage, that's the start of your funnel. They've just started in your funnel. And most businesses just don't think about how to craft that experience.
They would say, no, they're not on, they're just on some research pages or some Marcom materials. They haven't actually entered the realm where I strip off navigation and I squeeze them through this narrow flow that they have to complete. Very true. So what you're saying is, instead of thinking those as being two separate things like old school, we should imagine they can come from any direction onto any property, and we must be ready to architect it for them so that they can have an experience that is going to work for them.
Exactly. For example, before you buy anything, what's the first thing that you do, Glenn? Like, what do you go and look for?
Yeah, I'll probably research how other people have solved the problem that I've got.
Yeah, how other people have solved it. You'll look for reviews. And so you have to think about this. People are going out and they might be typing like your company name, reviews, or the problem that you're trying to solve. And so if you've hooked them in initially and then they're like, okay, yeah, I do have this problem, and they start Googling it and then you don't pop up anywhere, well, you've done the work to educate them and now they're going to go somewhere else. If you don't have a dedicated case study and testimonial page when somebody types in company name, reviews, that comes up, that's a missed opportunity. And so you have to think about what might this messy middle be and how can you create conversion assets to complement that.
Yeah. And then we can take it into competitors. We can take it into how we position ourselves via them. This is exactly what I was talking about when we were back at the research and what kind of analysis and data there is. We can consider Google to be our source of data. We can consider, in a B2B standpoint, G2. There's, Clutch, a number of these places. We can just act as if we're a prospect, and we'll see what we do and don't show up for. We'll see how our competitors nurture someone along, and maybe we don't. So that sounds like a very logical thing to do.
Yeah, I think the one thing that people don't do is just pretend that they are the target market trying to solve a problem. Get onto Google and see what is out there, and to start making this a bit more practical, because I know this is very high level at the moment. It's like, okay, well, you're probably thinking, where the hell do I start with all of this? First of all, go and Google the 5 stages of awareness by Eugene Schwartz, map it out in your Miro board or your Lucid chart, whatever you use, and start filling in the questions that somebody might be asking. And then you can start thinking about what sort of assets you can create to support those. And then what you should do is, if you can't name 30 to 100 of your customers, go and get on the phones and go and start talking to customers. I know that probably made a lot of people shudder and cringe, but that is where the money is. Ask good questions. As an example, one of the best questions that we ask is, how would you describe this business to a friend? And just be lazy. Go and outsource your job. You can ask the target market these questions. Yeah,
it's crucial. It's crucial. Choice of words they make will be vastly different from what yours are.
Exactly. Too many people want to sound fancy, or they try to translate it. Honestly, copy and paste exactly what they say and use that, because nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. And if you can create marketing collateral and copy where they're like, yes, and you get those yeses, they're like, yes, that's exactly my problem. And you want it to feel like you've ripped a page out of their diary and they're like, how does this person know me? And it's like, that's when the marketing magic happens.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, they're probably thinking, where has this entity been all my life? I need them now.
Exactly.
So that is the effect you want to have. As you say, that is going to require us to change what we have internally. And, would you grant that, at least for what we need as people, maybe if we're marketers that work in an organization where we have bosses who aren't marketers, or we're on our own, and we've worked hard to come up with those fancy schmancy terms that describe us, it seems that we're going to be rudely surprised in some cases. We're going to get some harsh feedback from the market, or agencies like yours who stand in their place and say, here's what the market is saying. What do you suggest to people as they prepare to take in that feedback? How should they not act, and how would you prefer they do act?
Yeah, well, I think everybody needs to be humble, but just think like, you don't want to be right, you want to be the best. And so marketing is a very humbling experience. The amount of time I've tested something or been so sure that this page that I was going to launch was going to crush, and then it comes back and I've been poorly defeated with my tail between my legs. Like you just have to test, and you don't know until you do. But what you can do is front load a lot of your work to make sure that you're making the best bets. Those 3 pillars: target market, message, offer. and understanding that target market. Then when you go out and test, you're limiting your chance of failure. But in saying that, very cliche, failure is how we learn. If you're not out there failing, then how do you know you're getting better and moving towards the right direction? So many people are scared to try things or be different or be polarizing in their market, and then they sit in their tiny little lane and they don't want to rock the boat. And then they put all this pressure on these marketing managers to get extraordinary results when they're not willing to give the marketing manager the leeway to do extraordinary things. And that doesn't make sense. It's just, you can't get extraordinary results but do the same boring things you've always done. And I do empathize with a lot of marketing managers, and that's something that we help, is a lot of just education inside, because some people don't do marketing and they're like, you just got to send out a brochure or launch a website, right? And that's it. Go and get me leads. I want to get 14x leads this quarter. Why can't you do that?
In the days when outbound was the only game, that could be done, right?
Yeah.
Everything that you are speaking about is premised upon an inbound model. Exactly. And we need to be able to forget what we know about, as you say, being right. I just want to be the best when that prospect comes by, and I want to serve them as well as possible. And if that brings me out of my swim lane, so be it. Exactly.
And one of the best ways is just starting to nurture internally an obsession with the target market. I can probably bet most people listening, and they probably know it, all of their marketing collateral is me, me, me. Like, we're the best and this is awesome. But if you just slowly start to try and shift that and get some small wins, or show some case studies, that can often help as well.
Need to break away from our conversation for a message about something that almost every marketer is affected by. Google moving us from Universal Analytics, or UA, to Google Analytics 4. After June 30, 2023, GA4 will be the only way to see our analytics. While it's called an upgrade to UA, it only takes a glance to know GA4 is a totally different product. Its data is all new too, meaning there's no easy way to bring UA reports you knew and loved to the GA4 interface. Since GA4 only starts collecting data once it's installed, companies wonder how they'll get everything, both past and future data, reported through this new interface. Is the only option to make it all over from scratch? No, there's another way. All the web analytics data that's in the interface is also available in Google's cloud database. B2B companies have data in silo systems that could be combined with this raw data and historicals to see their entire funnel. This enables you to fetch answers you'd never get from the old Google Analytics. Someone asks marketing a what-if question? You can use data anywhere in your company to answer it. Visualize interactions with prospects to better learn how they like to be treated. Have people who always ask for the same data? Make an automated dashboard for them. The learning curve for marketers here is steep, but you can make this leap, working hands-on in a supervised setting. That's why I am leading a live workshop to get you there. The GA Fast Forward workshop goes beyond installing GA4 and setting up conversions with Tag Manager. You'll learn how to normalize data coming from ad platforms and internal systems and pipe them to Google Cloud. Google Data Studio will then present it in the best way for getting your story across. By working directly on the tools for 2 days plus post-workshop support, you'll become very confident in using them. The first workshop is in Ottawa this October. Go to GA Fast Forward for all the details. It's also being held in other cities, so put yourself down to be notified when yours comes up, or nominate your city to be put on the tour. Those who want to take advantage of the Google Analytics stack should check out this program by visiting gafastforward.com. You can spell forward with the numeral 4 in the middle, as in GA4, or the normal spelling of the words to get there. That's it for the message. Let's get back to our guest. When it comes to the process, the actual building of a persuasion experience? I know you've got a few things that you'd like to always have in this system that you're building for a client. And if a marketer is trying to somewhat follow what you're doing, at least in theory, what kind of things should their process be? Are we talking that they should be coming up with variations to test on pages, different offers? Should they be, trying to bring some rigor to this? Tell us, without giving away any secret sauce, what kind of things a marketer, can at least try to do if they're going to shoot for a persuasion experience.
Awesome. Well, I'm very happy to give away the secret sauce because, if this will help somebody out, they can have it. That's totally fine. But here's where I would start. As long as you go and do your target market stuff, and I'm sounding like a broken record, you start to understand your key messages, you start to understand your positioning. Now we can start talking about the components of this funnel. And this is the fun stuff, but people skip the pre-work and they try and get fancy. So let's get started. Number one is that you will want to understand the target market's number one burning question and make sure that you can match that up with the channel strategy. So let's just say you're going to go after Google Ads because that's for most people the easiest, and they're trying to search something like, how do I solve problem X? So you're like, okay, we know they're trying to solve that. Let's create a lead magnet, which does not equal ebook. Ebook is a type of lead magnet, and there's enough PDFs online and PDF ebooks in the world. But you can create anything like a quiz. Is somebody trying to figure out a solution to something? For example, this is more B2C, but in the diamond ring engagement world, I've had a client where we created a quiz where it's like, what's going to be the perfect ring for my partner, my future fiance? Because men are like deers in the headlights. They don't know what to do. And so they go through, they click the options, and it's like, here's the ring you should choose. Why don't you jump on a call with us and we'll help you to choose it? Because you've already you've created that relationship with them. So first of all, a lead magnet answers the number one burning question. And my advice would be to create something useful that gets them a quick win. So you might create, like, splinter off your product. You might create like a spreadsheet or some sort of template, something that gets them a quick win and isn't just they're not going to open this boring PDF and go, meh, like, I can't be bothered to read this. You want them to engage with it. The point is not just that you get the download and you get the email address, like, you actually want them to engage with the lead magnet as well. Like, I know that old chestnut, so annoying. It has to be valuable. So you have to, you deeply and thoughtfully think about what is going to help them to solve that problem and get them a step closer. And so that's step number one. And then we'll just keep it very simple, a two-step funnel. You have your opt-in page, which has the lead magnet on it. Okay. And then you have where they land next. Don't send them, for the love of all thing conversions, don't send them to a boring thank you page. Send them to your offer page next. They download the lead magnet and then they go straight to your offer page. And you can have a little line of text at the top that says, thanks for downloading my ebook and whatever. But what's going to happen is at least 3% of people are going to be like these hyperactive buyers. They're going to be ready to solve a problem with you. And so this is where you need to create what we call this golden hippo offer. So you want to create something that is going to make them like so excited that they're going to feel stupid if they don't take it up. And so here's the components of your golden hippo offer. Number one is getting very clear on their dream outcome. And so you should already have that from your target market avatar. Inputs and outputs, Marketing's just inputs and outputs. So you do all that research because it becomes inputs for right now. And that's why it's so important, because people skip it and they're like, oh, what should our offer be? Let's make it a demo. It's like, cool, thanks for adding to the noise of the marketing. Yes, exactly. And it doesn't have to be.
This is copy and paste at this point.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you have all the information and now you're just inputting it into what it should be.
I'm taking a moment to tell you about an upcoming workshop that tackles the Google transition that we're all facing. We now have less than 9 months before the current Universal Analytics goes away. The sooner it's installed, the more data you'll have in Google Analytics 4. But whether you have installed GA4 or are still on Universal Analytics, you must still handle how to show trends over time, as GA4 counts activity differently from the old platform. And you'll have to produce reports because GA4 is missing many that were in the old version. When it comes to the new Google Analytics, Google is leaving a lot more up to you than just running a simple setup wizard. Now, I want to be clear, there are many GA4 migration paths out there. And since you're going through a full-blown migration, you should consider the alternative of working with industry standard components that you can do your GA4 analysis and reporting on, as well as use it with the data that's in all of your systems. And Google is including with GA4 functionality for accessing the raw web data analytics that are behind the interface. You can seize this chance to consolidate that data with your other systems. Yes, you'll have to learn some new things, but you don't have to feel overwhelmed by this. It's not daunting when you're using tools on data that you already are familiar with an expert in the room personally guiding you. And that's how my GA Fast Forward program works. After 2 days, people will leave with reports that show your stakeholders funnel data that's tied to business performance. Now, the next workshop is going to be in Ottawa this December, and all the info, including how to get $200 off by booking early, can be found at gafastforward.com. That's GA as in Google Analytics, and the words fast forward. You can spell it all out or put the numeral 4 as in GA4 followed by word. gafastforward.com. Thanks for listening. Let's get back to the conversation.
So, you know their dream outcome, you package that up some way into what they're going to get, and then you think of what are all of the problems, and then you just dot point out the problems and show them how you're going to solve it. Now, when you're creating this offer and this landing page or sales page or offer page, there's different words for it. I call it an offer page. You want to remember what you're trying to sell here. You're not trying, if you're trying to generate leads, which most of these listeners will be, B2B leads, and you're not trying to sell them to take up and buy your product. You're trying to sell to get them on the phone. That's what you're trying to sell. You're getting them to become a lead. So don't overwhelm them with too much information about how great you are and what you do. Remember, there's what people want to hear and what they need to hear. Right now, how can you show them that they're going to get immense value from this call, from becoming a lead, whether they go ahead with you or not? Yes, just the next step. So it's like, okay, on this call, I'm going to show you how to do X, Y, Z. And so these are like the problems that you'll solve. I'm going to show you how to solve problem 1, problem 2, problem 3. And after the call, I'm also going to send you out this document that's going to show you all these things. And so most people are doing this. They'll be like, oh yeah, in the sales call, we tell them this and we give them this value and then we do this. But they don't say that on the page. And this is where the curse of knowledge is. So just have a think, like, what's the value we give? And then you probably send out, or you hopefully do, maybe a proposal. And there's probably something valuable in the proposal, and you can dress that up. You can get a bit marketer on it and make it fancy.
The proposal, if we think of it in other terms, it's a roadmap that they can look at for achieving the solution. So it happens to be done by you, but so again, it's just taking these things that are knowledge, bottles up and releasing them, but letting people know before they take an action that this is what they're going to get.
Exactly. That's right. Yeah. And so just making it very clear the value you'll provide and that they will come off that call better than what they went in, whether they go ahead with you or not. It's not dependent on them coming ahead with you. It's whether. Doesn't matter. Even if they don't go ahead with you, they're going to walk away with more value. And that's what you should be doing. You should be hoping to leave every single interaction that you have with somebody with value. You should be hoping that they are better off than how you found them.
I can think of this as a win, even if we didn't get that initial win from that company, because whether we're using paid or organic or any channel going, everyone on the planet wants referrals.
Yes,
so
exactly.
If they find that they got a ton of value, they're probably going to tell someone.
Mm-hmm. Word of mouth compounds. Relationship equity compounds. And so every time you interact with somebody, that's part of your persuasion experience. You know, like you should be training your sales team. You should be making sure they all have the perfect canned responses. I've worked with big companies where they let the salesperson send out whatever they do want to at the time, and it's not controlled and it's not optimized, and all of these tiny little touch points. And don't overcomplicate it. Right now, let's just figure out who the target market is. But this is what you can start building on, because there's all of these little leaks in your funnel, and little leaks sink big ships. So if you can start to find these and chip away at it and go, okay, why aren't our sales team converting more? And then you'll probably look under the hood, and maybe it's like, okay, it's because Gary's sending out this and he has an awesome conversion rate, but Pete's sending out this and it's totally different. So how can we put Gary's stuff, and how can we templatize and processize it and keep building and keep iterating on that?
Yeah, no, that's great. So in terms of technology, there's clearly parts of this that involve a standard marketing stack. But do you think that if someone's going to attempt to do this, or if we were to go inside of your shop and find out how you do this, are there other pieces of technology in the stack to help us? It would seem to me there's enough moving parts here. We need to have some sort of project management, or at least a tracking system, so that we can, keep up on this methodology of getting ever better.
Yeah, definitely. And I'll go into the tech stack. I definitely recommend that people keep a change log, and where they're keeping track of the results they get. We start with a lot of businesses and I'm like, cool, what have you tried before? And they're like, oh, I'll shoot you a loom. And I'm like, no, you'll create a change log and you'll send me the change log with the learnings in it. And you will keep doing that, because there's no point doing things and not learning from them and having a clear hypothesis of what you're trying to learn. In terms of a tech stack, people try to overcomplicate this as well. So you should have a CRM. We use ActiveCampaign the most, but people use HubSpot. It doesn't matter. You just need the form code, embed the form code, and then it just needs to tag people and move them through the funnel and put them in the right email sequences. So any CRM that has that capability, which is most of them now, is fine. Then what you might find is that your CMS, or what your website is built on, especially in B2B, might be this complex custom beast. So what you can do is just get a developer to code up the page, like this new page, in static HTML. And then you can launch it onto the site under the domain, and you don't have to worry about trying to integrate it to the current site. That's just what we do for most of our clients when we're testing and doing minimum viable, because sometimes those websites are built like houses of cards, and we're not going in there to do anything. We're just going to make our page and launch it. So you can, there's all these workarounds. And in terms of project management, we use ClickUp for ours. Okay. That's the strongest tool. But really, you just need a CRM and you just need a way to launch it. And so you can either do it on a subdomain if you need to, or you can just launch static HTML into a website.
And I love that kind of, you've sliced the Gordian knot there with the static HTML. Somebody may not even know it. They might go in with the best of intentions saying, well, how about we put like a pop-up form on each page? Or how about we embed something into the footer? That is immediately going to run them afoul of how their entire CMS is built. And they may be finding themselves slogging it through a no-win battle for a very long time trying to get that, when, as you say, if there's one page that we can have, then we're able to do the experimentation without all of that grief.
Yeah, exactly.
What's your take on how channels like your Google ads, like a Facebook ads, like LinkedIn, how do these kind of above the click and post-click experience, how do they factor in? How are we supposed to think of them? Do we leave them to the very end of this process? Are they with us all the way and we're touching them? What is your approach?
So always start with the traffic, because there's no point me making a beautiful, fancy 10 out of 10 world-class funnel and then there's not the correct traffic to go there. And that's where we're talking about the target market and the conversation that you're entering, because if you're doing it on Facebook, that's a different temperature to if somebody's like directly searching for what you do on Google. Different conversations, different temperature.
Yes.
So always start with the channel strategy, but also remember that it doesn't have to be paid. People are very obsessed with ads, and ads is an awesome way to scale, but it depends on what your goals are. So what I would normally do with a company is actually audit what's working now. What is our 80-20 rule? And often it is referrals and strategic partnerships, but they don't realize those are like they don't give it those names as the channel strategy. And so one of just because now I have to close this loop in my brain and talk about this channel and then I'll get back on track. But one of the really good channels that we love are strategic partnerships. Who already has our customers engaged and has their trust, and how can we create that partnership with them? For example, for our company, we don't run any paid and we do 6-figure months within our first 7 months of operating. How do we do that? Because traffic agencies that don't do conversion assets, it's a symbiotic relationship. So we have these partnerships with traffic agencies who send clients our way, and they're so happy to, because then they're not going to go and try and find a full stack agency, or they're not going to leave, and they're bringing in this expert and it's providing more value. And so that's actually how we build our business. And it's often how a lot of B2B do, and they don't realize. I'm working with another client where he was like, oh yeah, these guys, they don't even deal with these leads. They just ignore them. And I'm like, well, you want these leads. They don't want them. Why don't you go and ask, even though it's a competitor, it doesn't hurt to ask, why don't you see if you can buy those leads, or they'll just send them your way and we can have that new channel of leads. So strategic partnerships is a very big one. Who has my customers engaged? Webinars, you can do co-webinars, but I digress. Well, maybe I didn't. I just dove very deep on one channel, but B2B, especially complex, has a very big opportunity to create these strategic partnerships, and a lot of people don't do it strategically. Okay, I'm not going to say strategic again, but back to your question, what should you do? Get two working. A lot of people need to stop starting and start finishing. They try and start all these channels and they're doing all these tests, but they're not doing them properly. They're not executing them properly. So get two channels working, get two channels humming, get the processes and the systems going, and spend 80% of your time trying to scale those. Spend 20% of your time trying out new channel strategies. So that might be Google Ads and strategic partnerships. You might work on those first, get them working before you try anything else. And then you can start testing Facebook. Then you can start testing YouTube ads. Then you can start testing TikTok. You can start testing email. Actually, you shouldn't be testing email. You should just have email working. And there's all of these other things you can layer in. And you're trying to build an all-star team. Yeah. So you've got your two key players. Now you're just auditioning people to come onto your all-star team. And it's like, okay, TikTok didn't work. You got to set the parameters for what does working mean. And it's like, okay, who's the next all-star player? And that's how we think of channel strategies. We're trying to audition people into our all-star channel team.
Yeah, and that's great. There's just a few things there that I think are even a benefit for us in how we message this up to management. I know that one of the practices you have is when you're describing how much lift something brings, and the way that you would have structured the change log to track this is just what you said, with thinking of that channel as a player on your team. So you don't just give a blanket, we got a 20% lift in conversions last month. You say, our Google Ads top of funnel campaign brought, together with this landing page, these two things in tandem brought us a 20% lift last month. And you say that because it's going to help later when you want to use those channels in concert with each other, because you can then go back, you can say, well, we spent a little while and we tried Google Ads, same way as before, but we tried to also layer on this third-party retargeting. We actually saw a 5% drop with our standard offer with that combination. You've done everybody a service there. You're not going to get fired. Instead, what they're going to say is, thank you for trying that. It's in the change log. We know it didn't work. Okay, so we're going back to just the one we did before, right?
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
And that's the habit, right? That's how we're constantly changing it and making that experience better for customers and prospects.
Exactly. And if somebody needs a good framework to choose what to test, and I know what will happen is the CEO or someone high up like, I want you to test this. And you'll be like, what? Like, why would I test that? And so there's a good framework. You can probably download a spreadsheet. There's one called ICE, but I use the PI framework. So that just helps you to prioritize what it is. There's 3 different things where it's the I is importance, the E is ease, and the P I always forget. But that's a bit of intrigue for you to encourage you to go and Google
we'll have
it
in
now.
The show notes.
It's a bit early for me in Melbourne. So what you do then is you put all of your ideas in this spreadsheet, and then you rank them out of 5 or out of 10, and then you can start to prioritize these ideas. So when people are coming to you, because the best thing about being a marketer is that everyone tells you how to do your job better. And so this is a good buffer. Like, it's like a suggestion box. And it's like, sorry, Sally, that didn't rank very high in the pie chart. We're like the pie prioritization. We're not going to go with that. But I find that's a really good way to buffer outrageous suggestions, especially from people higher up, because they want you to test things and you have to be like, how do you say that that's a stupid idea without saying it's a stupid idea? And the pie framework
you can run afoul of that, or you can actually implement what they said without thinking about it. And, I will call that you ending up with a pie on your face.
Exactly.
No good comes from that.
No good comes from I thinks. Yeah. Like the hardest thing sometimes internally for marketing managers is having to tell people you're not the target market and we don't care what you think. It's not about what you think. It's about what the target market cares about. And that's where like a split test is greater than 1,000 opinions. If you can just go and test it and even just get rudimentary results, that will often help you. But yeah, that would be the best way to navigate that.
Perfect. So Alisha, I have to ask, you've got this experience that I know you've worked in 100+ person agencies, been part of business magazine brands, and now you're coming into this focal area, you and your co-founder. Could you maybe tell me what you think is part of your background that's uniquely served you well in bringing all this wisdom to the discipline of making a persuasion experience? What do you think it is about Alisha that does that?
I think 2 things. And one is that I come from a sales background. I've done cold calling, I've done telco sales, like agency sales. I've done all of these things. And so what I notice is often the difference between, if I have to be, the difference between me and some other marketers is that I see marketing and sales as one holistic cog. And it's one thing, one unit, one team. And that isn't the same for a lot of companies where like marketing is like, tick, I got you the lead. And sales is like, these leads suck. And it's like, okay, you got to have a bit of empathy and you've got to like be on the same page. And I believe you had an episode about lead scoring and like how to like create, so put that in the show notes, but being able to create like a universal language of what makes a good lead, because you're on the same team and you want it to succeed. And you should be talking to the sales team because they're in the trenches. They actually know the target market better than you do because they're talking to them every day. They know the problems. Listen to some sales calls. I would implore you to get on the phones and be a salesperson for a week and then see. So that's the first bit is, sales and my sales experience. And that comes into you're always selling something, and that's just persuasion. So a lot of people think persuasion and manipulation, and that's not right. Persuasion is trying to convince somebody to do something that will help them, and manipulation is convincing them to do something that will help you. And so if you genuinely have a product or a service that is going to help somebody, you need to go out there. You have an ethical and moral obligation to go out there and to help those people to get it and to understand. So very much around the sales, and I'm always upskilling and learning as well. And I just remember that the thing that will never change is the psychology. So I don't get caught up on the tech and these new things. And, there's a lot of like funnel dude bros that really nerd out over all this stuff. But the thing that is unchanging is the psychology. So I study a lot of that and then layer in the nice to haves, because I honestly think I could write a Google Doc landing page and outperform a lot of people's sales pages, because I would hit on the psychological factors and it would strip away all of the confusing parts on the page. So sales, psychology is greater than technology.
As we've been saying all along, it's a conversation. So you are probably you're taking the mindset that I might say this to a person over the phone or in person, and that's a whole different thing than a ivory tower type of, I'm writing a treatise. This is I think it's wonderful, and by the way, great to hear that you're also always willing to learn. You're still in your 20s, so you have a very long runway ahead of, I can only imagine how much learning you're going to have over that time period. Alisha, is there anything else that you want to leave our listeners with about either what they can do better or how they can get in touch with you if they're curious to know more?
Yeah, so I'll start with what I'd like to leave everybody on. Don't overcomplicate it. Just understand the target market, and if you're going to cut down a tree, spend 80% of your time sharpening your axe. Just really deeply think about it, and don't succumb to some of the internal pressures to rush. Figure out what they want and how you can best serve them. Talk to them, understand them, and that's going to get you a long way in your marketing. Marketing is inputs and outputs. The stronger the inputs, the better the outputs. Otherwise, garbage in, garbage out. So that's what I would like to leave everybody on. But if you would like to connect with me or to start a conversation after this podcast, there's a few ways. One, you can add me on LinkedIn. So Alisha Conlin-Hurd. I won't spell it. You'll get it wrong, but it'll be in the show notes, I'm sure. Same for my YouTube channel as well. And I'm testing out a new channel strategy on Twitter. So if you want to see me fumble around Twitter and unlock that channel, come and join me on Twitter. And finally, if there's anybody that's thinking, wow, I understand this, but I don't think we have the time or the resources internally to roll this out, just come to our website, persuasionexperience.com, and I'll chat with you for 30 minutes. You won't chat with some sales guy, you'll chat with me, and I will want to leave you better off than what you come in. So I will show you exactly what to do, and either you'll work with me to get it done or you'll go and implement it yourself. But I will leave you better off than what you came in, that's for sure.
That's fantastic. Thanks again for coming on the show, Alisha.
Thanks, Glenn. That was really fun.
So I know that people got valuable experience here, very fresh and new approach that we should all take to heart and that we can all use to make our funnels even better.
Thanks for listening. Follow the show on Twitter at Funnel Reboot. If you like what you have heard today, please consider leaving a review wherever you get your podcasts.